Well, today's the day. It's a Sunday, what was it, 11:45 in the morning, and I'm determined to get this engine out. I'm quite nervous actually. I don't know why, but because I think I've done all the really difficult bits. You can see here I've attached a chain to the block, and I've just used a pretty big bolt each end on each side. I can get the chain through this hook thing at the front, but I couldn't get the chain through the thing at the back. So because I used a bolt and a plate and a washer at the back, I thought I might as well do the same at the front. I have to undo the bolt on the top of the engine mount there, or at least that's the way I'm going to do it, and lift that out. But of course it's different on the other side of the engine, so let's take a look at that. That isn't a fabulous view, but I think you can see here's the engine mount bracket, and I've got to unbolt that from the side of the block, but I've also, I don't know if I'm going to get away with just doing that or if I need to undo it from the top of the engine mount. Now the thing is that if I've got to undo it from the top of the engine mount, you can see this heat shield around the steering column is going to get in the way, so I think I'm going to have to take that off. If I remember rightly, it's just this nut on the top, and I think there's a nut on the bottom as well. Yeah, it does feel like there is one right down the bottom here. So I think it's just those two, and then I can get that off. And that gives me just about enough access to the engine mount nut. I'm pretty sure when I took... Now, what did I do? I had to undo the engine. Oh, of course, because I dropped the subframe. Yeah, months ago I dropped the subframe on this. When I did that, I'm pretty sure that I undid the... oh no, I say that. I was going to say I undid it with the steering column in place, but of course it wouldn't have been, because I would have had to remove the steering column to drop the subframe. So, yeah. I think there's just about enough room if I remove the heat shield. But let's see if we can do it just by removing the nuts on the side of the block. I think getting it out will probably be okay. It's just that getting it back in, if I don't take the engine mount actually off, the bracket off of the top of the engine mount, I've got a feeling that's going to be a problem, when I come to reinstall the engine. But anyway, let's crack on. I immediately hit a minor problem, which was that the wheels on the lift on my engine hoist would not go under the subframe because the ride height on the car is so low. So if you're watching this and you're a 116 trophy racer, then yeah, this is going to affect you, I'm pretty sure. If you're watching this and you just want to take the engine out of your road car, I don't think this is going to be a problem. I didn't want to lift the car too much because we're back to the situation where I then have to get the hoist to lift the engine very high over the front of the car, and I don't think it will do it. So you can see that I've just used some pieces of wood each side. They're about 50 mil high, 2 inches in old money. So that's just enough to get the wheels of the hoist under the car. As you can see, I've got the engine partially out, but I found something really important, actually, as a hint. Let me move the camera forward. The Haynes manual says that you should take this bracket off and then lift the engine out. And that's fine. It's all good. There's one bolt there, which you can see I've loosened. There's another bolt here, which I've loosened. But there is one underneath, and it didn't matter what combination of extensions and universal joints and goodness knows what I tried, I could not get squarely onto that bolt. And in fact, I think, we'll check when I get the engine out, but I think I've burred the top of the bolt now. They're Torx, external Torx bolts. So what I did this, I spent probably 45 minutes trying to just get that bolt undone. So I decided I'd put a block of wood down the side of the engine to stop it from going over to one side. And in fact, what I had to do was I had to use the wood. I don't know what I've done with the piece of wood now, but basically I used it to lever the engine across to get this part of the bracket past the steering column and the top of the steering rack. And it has worked. Probably getting the engine back in may be a bit of a challenge, but we'll see. But I'm convinced, well, maybe if I had have managed to find the right combination of extensions and sockets, I think what you need, I've only got 3/8 drive Torx sockets. What you need is 1/4 inch drive Torx sockets to give you more room. And you can't use any adapters, because every time you try and attach an adapter, the width of the adapter then pushes the the inline socket wrench and extension. It pushes it to one side, which is when it starts to just turn the top of the bolt. So yeah, so this is where I'm up to. So let's get the thing right out. So this thing's going to go high enough. That's a bit worrying, isn't it? I think it'll just about do it. I'm not going to drop it onto the floor, but I don't want it hanging at this height. I'm just about to go and have some lunch, so I want to get it down a bit. So let's get some plastic sheeting. Actually, let's just put this underneath in case it drips more stuff. Okay, we'll just let it down very gently. Brilliant. That wasn't very clever, was it? Just to stop it before it hit it. Something else I've found with the engine hoist, let's move it over a bit, is that the reach of this hoist is, I think it's about maybe 20 centimetres short, ideally. It could do with a bit of a longer arm on it. But the other thing is that the jack part of the hoist was actually resting against the bumper. Now my car, it was actually resting against the laser sticker there. On my car, perhaps that doesn't matter that much, but if you were doing it on a road car, your pride and joy, I would suggest take the front bumper off, because I think that's a bit of a liability, having that there when you've got the engine hoist. And the trouble is the engine hoist will slip forward, so it will put pressure on the bumper. I don't much like having a 150 kilo or whatever it is, 200 kilo engine hanging from a bit of chain, but I'm sure the chain can take it. Okay. Oop. I think that'll do us. So I'm going to leave a break there. I'm going to go and have some lunch, and then I'll come back out and put the engine on the engine stand. To get the engine onto the engine stand, unfortunately, I need to get the flywheel and clutch assembly off. So you can see I've removed the clutch, which we'll have a look at in a second. My flywheel is going to be different from yours if you're running a road car, because this is a TTV solid flywheel, lightweight flywheel, and you are probably going to have a dual mass flywheel. So it will look slightly different, but the procedure I think is going to be the same. The sort of offset pieces on my engine stand are only about that deep, so you just can't. There's no way you're going to get them over the top of the flywheel and clutch, or not even over the top of this flywheel. I think if you were in another sort of car with a shallow flywheel, like a lot of them, certainly when I used to fix cars as a kid, they just had a single quite thin plate as a flywheel. It would work over that, but over something of this depth, it's just not going to work. So I'm going to have to do that. That means new flywheel bolts and new clutch cover bolts. They're not reusable, which is a bit of a pain, but hey. The other thing, if you are watching this and you're a 116 trophy racer, if you didn't fit the flywheel yourself, you might not be aware that the flywheel bolts are not the standard 116 flywheel bolts. They're too long. There are ways to cut them down, but I've never fancied that. And in fact, there is an appropriate part for it. And if you go back and look at one of my previous videos about fitting the flywheel and clutch in the car originally, the part number for the flywheel bolts is there. And also what I'll do, actually, now thinking about it, is I'll drop the part number for the flywheel bolts into the notes for this video. Okay, so flywheel off next. Oh, sorry, we were going to look at the clutch. So I've done a season of racing and probably as many test sessions as well. So I've done 6 races and probably 6 days of testing, maybe a bit more than that actually, perhaps more like 8 days of testing. And the clutch is holding up remarkably well. I mean, it's if I just bring that up closer, hopefully you can see that. There's still plenty of material on there. I'm not going to replace it. That looks fine to me. And you can see that there's no real scoring or anything on the clutch cover. And if we just come back over here to the flywheel, it's completely smooth. There's no scoring, no marking. So looks really good. I'm really pleased. Very happy with that. Something else I should mention about the flywheel, the clutch cover. Now, if you've been watching this series of videos, I think I did make a note to myself that I didn't have the spiral thing that holds the clutch in position, because it's a self-adjusting clutch. So what can happen is, as you if you're not careful, you can trigger the self-adjustment mechanism, and basically it just flies out to full adjustment, and apparently you need special tools to reset it. Anyway, I'd heard from somebody, and it was I think I can use his name. It was Anthony Seddon. I remembered something he told me a long time ago, which was, if you don't bash the clutch cover, it won't release, and therefore it won't suddenly self-adjust to full extent. He said, but if you drop it, it will spring open, and it will self-adjust. So I've been very careful when getting it off. So that's another note to you, whichever car, whether you're a 116 trophy racer or you're just doing this on your road car. If you haven't got the retainer tool to hold the clutch closed or in position, then just carefully take it off and don't bash it down or drop it, which is easier said than done, because if you're doing it on your own, like I was, as you undo the last bolt, of course, the thing's just going to flap out and fall on the floor. So you need to make sure you've got it supported and maybe even put a cushion underneath the flywheel in case it does drop off. As you can see now, I've got the flywheel off. The only thing I would say about this, it was pretty easy. No, it wasn't easy. It was pretty straightforward. But of course, the flywheel bolts are really tight, really, really tight. And so you need a brake bar. I certainly needed a brake bar. And I've got quite a long brake bar. I think it's about 1/2 metre long. And I use that. And I held the flywheel in place by jamming a piece of wood into the starter motor hole and against the teeth of the ring gear, for the starter motor. Now there is another way of doing it, which I've forgotten the detail, but it is in one of my earlier videos, so I don't even remember the detail from my own videos. But there is a way of doing it with a spanner, and I think what you do is you put a bolt in here, one of the bell housing bolts, and you put a bolt into the flywheel, and then you put a spanner between the two, and that holds it in place while you undo the bolts. So that's one thing to watch out for. It's a T60 head. Now I'm pretty certain that's the T60 on the shortened bolts, and I think the standard BMW bolts are slightly smaller, T50 or something, if I remember rightly. What I do remember is I didn't have a T60 drive, and I had to buy one to do this. So if you're a 116 trophy racer, just bear that in mind. You're going to need a T60 Torx socket wrench thing. The other thing I've noticed is this was one of the early things I did, and early on when I was building the car, I seemed to go totally over the top with Loctite. I used it on everything. I used too much of it. And there's certainly an awful lot of Loctite residue in the bolt holes, which I should be able to clean out. But if the worst comes to worst, I'll just run a tap through the thread just to clean it, and then get that done. And the other thing I'm going to do, and this is purely your own choice, is I'm going to change the pilot bearing because I didn't change it last time. So I think I'm going to buy a new pilot bearing and put that in. The one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to touch the rear oil seal. It's not leaking oil. There's some shiny. I've got a feeling some of that is from when I spilt the oil. Let's have a closer look. Yeah, there's no real sign of oil leaking around from around the crankshaft, so I'm not going to touch the rear oil seal. I know there's probably an argument to say, well, you've got the thing this far, surely you might as well do the oil seal, but actually they can go wrong so many times and you can end up having a leaking oil seal. I'm not confident enough at the moment, I think, to do it. I'd have to split I'd have to take the, oh no, I probably wouldn't actually. I'm not sure if I have to take off the, take the crank right out, which I wasn't planning on doing anyway. Yeah, bottom line, I'm not touching it. So I'll leave that to your choice. Other than that, I think everything went okay. So now hopefully I can get it bolted onto the engine stand, and then it's 3:45 at the moment. By the time I've done that, I'll probably call it a day for today before I start getting involved in getting the head off and what have you. Let's talk about amount of time I've taken today. So if you remember, we started from a position where the engine was in the car, it was sitting on the engine mounts, but that's all really that was holding it in, and a couple of blocks of wood under the sump at the front. I started this morning at about 10 o'clock, I think, worked through till 12:15, so that's 2.25 hours, and I didn't get started this afternoon till about 2 o'clock, I think. So that's 2 3/4. Oh, that's handy. So that's 4 hours so far. to get this far. Now, remember, I spent about an hour trying to overcome the problem of unbolting the engine mount bracket off this side of the block, off the right hand side of the block, which I didn't achieve, and it's still there. But yeah, so you could probably save that at that time, by not falling into the hole that I fell into. Okay, I'll pick up again once I've got it onto the engine stand. Well, that was quite a trial. It's taken me 1 hour and just coming up to 1.5 hours to get that plate, that yellow thing on the back of the engine. And I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this because I don't know, having a senior moment or something. I was trying to fit the plate with this tube thing, this actually in the stand. And so the stands, I've got the weight of the stand to contend with. Plus, for some reason, I decided to lock the plate at a certain angle. I can't believe I did it. I locked the plate at a certain angle and then tried to fit it. And then I thought, oh no, I'll try it 90 degrees to that, and rotated it and tried to fit it. But of course, the easiest thing to do was to do what I've done there. Now, that actually took me... what did that take? Once I'd realised all the mistakes I'd made and had all the futile attempts, it actually then took me about 10 minutes to get the plate on the back of the engine. I know it's got those crazy big washer things there. It's because I don't have any decent sized washers, and they shipped the wrong ones with the engine stand. In fact, they're supposed to be sending me some replacements. So unfortunately, I've got these square things which are actually used for mounting seat harness hooks to the floor. That's what I use them for anyway, or I have done in the past. I've used them for some other stuff, but they're quite useful because you can also use them on the bed of your pillar drill to clamp stuff down and things like that. So they're very useful. And luckily I had them because I didn't have anything else. Now, of course, it was bound to happen. As I'm moving the engine around, I've got even more fluid on the floor. So I've got another load of coolant and a little bit of very small amount of oil, which I'm going to have to clean up. It's just gets slippery. The coolant makes it very slippery underfoot. So all I'm going to do now is slide it onto the stand, and then that's it for today. It's getting late in the evening. It's getting flipping cold out here. It's not that, I'll say it's late in the evening. It's 5:15, but it is a Sunday. And my wife does like to see me occasionally. So I'm going to get it on the stand, and then that'll be finished. And that actually finishes this series of videos, because obviously the video series was about taking the engine out of the car, which I've now succeeded. We'll then move on to another set of videos dismantling some parts of the engine. So the intention is to take the head off, because I've got another head, and also to take the sump off and redo the big end bolts, big end bearings, which most people do at least once a season, I think. Some people do it twice a season, but it'll be interesting to see the state of the bearings when we get them out. Okay, so thanks for watching this series of videos, and please do like and subscribe if you like this content, and I'll catch you in the next one.